everyone about the Nobel Laureate Summit, if you could, like in a minute.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
The Nobel Peace Laureates have developed a regular meeting called a Nobel Laureate Summit, and they come together and they discuss how can we be better building the future. And not only do they come together, but they started an organization for young people, 17 to 30-year-olds. Rigoberta Menchú from Guatemala was particularly instrumental in getting this young people's organization going. And wow, they are going to be in a nearest.
Still talking. We're on a meeting.
The Nobel laureates are going to be in a nearest big city, Monterey, September 18th to 21st. And we can join them because their summit is overlapping with something called the Encuentro de Valores Humanos, the encounter of human values. For over a dozen years, this conference has been going on, and our friend Marilyn Turkovich, the executive director for the Charter for Compassion, is sort of a co-planner of the Encuentro, getting excellent speakers on compassion and justice and peace building. And we're invited to be at the compassion banquet. We are invited to interact with people from all over. It's our type of thing. San Antonio is a model. And we're going to have 2 tables at the banquet, and we want you in the room with us, or we want young people to go and be at that junior Nobel laureates gathering. So thank you. I'll put in that box the link where you can read about reservations and hotel and airplane. And so, or you can pray for us. If you can't come to Monterey, pray for the Nobel Summit, where about a dozen San Antonio people will be, like Julie and Anne and I.
Thanks. Julie also has a book reading this week. Julie, you want to tell us about that?
So I wrote a book called Why Peace and Prayers Are Not Enough. And it's about Palestine and Israel, because I served over there for more than 4 years. And we're doing a book reading conversation about that. And it's at the Twig, Tuesday, August 27th, from 5:30 to 7. And I'm hoping it will be a little bit of reading, but more discussion. I'm just inviting people, all voices, to be heard. And that was the reason I wrote the book, is there were so many Palestinians I worked with who said, please tell our stories. And so the book is a scrapbook of stories and photos and information. So please come. Wine and cheese and conversation.
Thanks, Jules. And some of you will remember that there are 2 conferences, officially, unofficially, whatever, starting today. There is the NOMAS conference, and that's happening at the neighborhood place. And I do know that it starts today. I'll see if I can find the link to that to put into chat, but it's at the neighborhood place. And boy, I wish I could remember the acronym, but it connects to domestic violence and its prevention, and partnered with I'm just going blank this morning. I just came back from vacation. You know how you have vacation brain? It's there. It's so there, right? But it's partnered with all the different collaboratives that are working on domestic violence prevention, as well as the Pathways to Hope conference, the annual mental health conference at the Tobin. There are some activities, I think, this evening, but it officially begins tomorrow and then Saturday. And I'll try to put the link into chat for that as well. In both cases, there's still time to register and to go and be a part of those. And so I encourage you to do that. I'm trying to make connection with our presenter, so see what's happening there. Are there any other announcements that others would like to speak to? Oh, I got a note from our presenter. He's coming. So be right there. Martha
Okay.
Ann.
Yeah, and you can cut me off at any minute.
Okay.
I want to invite everyone to look at www.inspiresindex.org. I'll put that in the chat box. It is a group that invites universities, colleges, but I want you to think of this in terms of institutions, whether it's our synagogue, our mosque, our church, our whatever, our group, that we look at 53 questions, and they have to do with how interfaith friendly are we? So right now in the University of the Incarnate Word campus, like last night with our new faculty and in all kinds of things I'm doing, and students of no faith, students who are Hindus, students who are Baha'is, students who are Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians. Can everyone feel comfortable? Can it be an atmosphere that there is not prejudice or bullying or snubbing? And I'm going to be real honest with you, like I was with our new faculty last night. For the first time, the daughter of a Hindu is close to the White House. We may hear ugly conversations going on in our country. We may see ugly things on social media. The United States is almost the most, or in a couple of years, we will be the most religiously diverse country in the history of the world. So, whether we're talking about our 3-year-olds who ask, why does that man wear a turban? And we need to know how to talk about Sikhs. Or they say, why does that woman have a veil on? We need to know how to talk about hijab. We need to be the people who lead in doing civil conversations. So the Inspires Index are questions like a self-study that we've been doing at Incarnate Word. And for the first time, we are now on the Inspires Index. We are willing to ask ourselves these 53 questions, and we are willing to do it every year. Are we getting better in our interfaith friendliness on campus?
Wow.
Any questions or comments? That's what we do at the intersection. We build interfaith friendliness.
That index is very exciting and interesting, and how somebody came up with that. So thanks, Martha Ann.
And I wrote to Wendy yesterday that I'm glad any of us, all of us, could talk about that, or at the intersection sometime I could talk about that. It's a good 53 questions.
Okay, we will definitely put that into the mix. I think that's a very good thing to bring into this mix, as well as the Interfaith Summit that we had this summer that's leading into how are we moving forward here in the city, working together as many faiths. There's another continuing meeting to all of that work on September 24th. So this index would be important information into that kind of work. So I don't know, Martha Ann, could you send me that information to make sure we get that, into the mix?
I will. And if anybody's free at lunch, you can join a little lunch I'm having at Incarnate Word today, where we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be talking with a visiting scholar from the country of Georgia between Russia, Iran, and Turkey. We're going to talk about interfaith and building understanding with Vladimir Narcia and about the Inspires Index. So I'll put all of that in chat right now.
That'd be great. And Ram still is coming. He's having trouble with the link. So I just resent it to him again, and we'll see what happens. So I'll give an introduction of Ram, so we don't have to do that when he gets here. One, he's a very exciting guy. He's been working with housing for quite some time, both inner city and as of late, he was with Prospera West, but as of late, he's been working with Good Acres. Some of you might remember Good Acres. They do a lot of intentional work with congregations in particular to look at their facilities, their land property, and what could be done with that. As opposed to the article that I've been sending out, I wish I could remember the acronym, but you know, the NIMBY, not in my backyard. There's another acronym, something like YIGBY or something. Yes, in God's backyard. I think that might be it. And so that's the kind of work that they have been doing, is direct, and there's Ram, is direct work with congregations, walking with them, figuring out what might be done. And there are examples, actual places in San Antonio that have been doing this work. And so Ram is here this morning. Ram, I went ahead and I've been introducing you so we could move right into the conversation. Sorry about our glitch in communications this morning, but look at you. You're smiling. Anyway, I appreciate that. Talk about resilience. That's what this kind of work is, right?
Yeah.
Even with congregations, that facilities are some empty, not being utilized. So we're talking about the resilience of facilities and land. So Ram, I did the introduction. I'm just gonna move it to you. Not that you need to, but the screen is open if you want to do that, but just tell us all about the work. Maybe give us some examples, but how could others here get involved or connect to start doing that work as well? So thank you for being here.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Anne. Thank you for setting this up, and good morning to everyone. My name is Ramiro Gonzalez. I'm the board chair of the Impact Guild. The Impact Guild operates the Good Acres program. And we created the program back in 2018, 2019 was kind of the beginnings of it, all pre-COVID, obviously. And it was kind of born out of this question, which was really just, I think someone happened to pull an article of a church that did something fantastic over on the northeast side over in the northeast. And there was just a question of, why isn't more of this happening? And so we really started to dig into that question. We started to look at what are all of the land assets here, particularly in San Antonio, owned by churches, and what's happening with them? What is the real potential and opportunity that's standing here in front of us, and why isn't it already happening on its own? And so Good Acres was kind of born out of that question. And so in 2019, November 2019, we partnered with the city of San Antonio and LISC San Antonio to put on a mission-driven development summit. And that was an invitation to churches to come and just have this conversation with us. And we had about 45 churches come out, represented across San Antonio. And from that, we had about 20 churches by the end of it who said, or 20 congregations who said, hey, we've got property, let's do something. And then COVID happened, unfortunately. So while there was some immediate momentum and energy behind it, COVID kind of changed everything and really exacerbated the need, because even pre-COVID, this was an issue, declining congregations, particularly within inner cities, and what to do with these assets. Now, post-COVID, well, now it's even a bigger issue, even outside of the inner cities. And so we have continued to have these conversations with churches and walk with them through conversations with their congregations and their leadership to say, what does it look like for this property to be repurposed for community impact? And so what we have been doing since COVID, obviously went through about a year and a half there of just kind of letting it be. But since then, we've had more of those churches reach back out to us and say, okay, hey, all right, we're kind of past COVID. There's a bit of a new normal here for us, but we still are very interested and serious about this. And so what we've been doing lately is continuing these conversations with churches, because as many of you know, every denomination, every congregation has a different process in terms of how decisions are made, particularly as it concerns property. Is it the congregation's decision? Is it the denomination's decision? And starting to kind of walk through that. There's one church that just after COVID is the one that we really started working with deeply, which is Sunset Ridge Church of Christ. And they had they have a lot of parking around their church, and they had this one, I'd say it's probably about an acre and a half or so, parking lot that is between them and some of the adjacent neighborhoods. And what they were feeling was that these parking lots around their church created too much of a buffer between them and the adjacent neighborhoods in the community. So they were initially just saying, well, what could we use one of these lots for to do something great with? And in the end, and sometimes people think that anytime that we're talking with churches, that it's just about housing, but it isn't always. It starts a conversation of what's possible. And what ended up is that they ended up creating a park out of this 1.5 acre former parking lot. And it is just beautiful. If you've ever been to a Hemisphere Park here in San Antonio, it is just fantastic. It is very much like that. It feels a lot like Hemisphere Park, but over here near Sunset Ridge in the Alamo Heights area. And it's just opened, actually, just in the past few weeks. And they're starting to invite the community, and they're using it as a kind of a front porch to really have conversations with people in their community, to engage people. And it was a way to really maximize their property to better engage the community around them. Another project that we're not directly working on, but we kind of launched and are still kind of following it, is there's a church over on the west side San Antonio, which is it's Emmanuel Methodist Church over at Northwest 24th and Poplar Street. If you're familiar with that area, there's a HEB or grocer there. And they have about 4 acres right behind this grocery store in a very impoverished, low-income community. And the church the church building itself probably takes up, like, I don't know, probably 10% of that 4 acres. I mean, it's a very, very small footprint of the church and a lot of vacant land behind them. And many of the kids from the neighborhood have really just kind of taken over parts of that vacant lot and just turned it into a soccer field. And so we engaged them to just say, hey, what could be? What could be possible? And they were very receptive, very energetic about it. They're an older congregation. They've got about 50 members of their congregation. And we met with the trustees, we met with some of the denominational leadership and some of the community, and then some of the actual congregation members themselves. And this has been going on for about the past 18 months. So it's been a slow kind of journey, but it's necessary to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, that nothing is happening to anyone, but in fact, letting the church lead in terms of what their vision is. So that's what we're trying to seek to do, is just try to help facilitate what that vision may be and help clarify some things, particularly as it relates to, well, what does this neighborhood look like? What are the demographics of this area? What are the needs in the area? So trying to come alongside churches and help them conduct those kinds of need assessments so that they truly understand where they're located, the context in which they're located. And so ultimately this church decided that they wanted to do housing. And so now we're looking at we ended up helping to complete a vision. And this was also in partnership with another group called the Handprint Initiative that was born out of a private architecture firm here who isn't exclusively working with churches, but is just kind of engaged in other community development projects on private property. And so they've been really walking with them since the handoff on the more technical aspects of the project. And ultimately, we helped them connect with a local developer. They went through about 2 or 3 developers because there's not always alignment, right, with what the church may want to do versus any particular developer. There just wasn't a fit. And we finally found the third one, who has been really great, or it's been a really good partnership so far. Now they're looking at producing about 70 units on this parcel that was once, again, just vacant area. But they're also sectioning a part of it off so that they can continue to actually and improve a small soccer field for the kids in the area. So still preserving what the neighborhood was already starting to use that property for, and making sure that they could still preserve that for them. There's also going to be some commercial space on site, so that they can invite other nonprofits to occupy space in that area to serve those families, particularly things around daycare and workforce development. And then what's really great is it's right behind our main grocer, HEB. So these families have access to food right behind them, and then a bus line right along the side of them. So it really has turned out to be really what may become a model project. And in that one, I'll also mention, in terms of the structure, the church was very, just very certain that they did not want to sell the property, which was fine. That was kind of one of the early questions we had to figure out, because obviously that's an easy way to just kind of go from one thing to another, right? The cleanest way is just sell it to someone who wants to do something good. But not all churches want to do that, and that's perfectly fine. And there's lots of ways to kind of skin the cat. And so they said, we want to retain ownership of the property, so we helped them put together a ground lease with we've connected with a developer to put together a ground lease on the property. And so they are going to continue to own the land. They will lease it to the developer who is getting the financing to actually construct the project. So the developer will own the building and the improvements. The church will continue to own the land. And so that way they continue to have control over what happens in their property even 50 years from now. And maybe that building has served the majority of its useful life. They can still have some control over what the next chapter looks like. And so I'll stop there for a minute if there's any questions, but it's those kinds of projects that we are focused on, and again, coming alongside churches and congregations, whether it becomes a park or whether it becomes housing. But really, how can these properties be repurposed to respond to the need that's directly around those churches? Because for so many decades, these churches have been anchors in that community, have been institutions and providing opportunities and access to so many services. How can we continue to live into whatever the new chapter looks like for these churches? So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions so far.
So I'm just going to say to everybody, it's 8:24, and generally about 8:30, Ram, we take a pause and then for people who need to leave. So I'm just going to say that now, so that when people need to leave at 8:30, you just do that. But we want to keep going to hear more. Next week, though, we will be hearing from Neighborhood and Housing Services with the city, as well as the Chief Housing Officer, Mark Carmona, on an update on the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan SHIP with the city. So that's a sidebar. There's a question, if you would put your name and contact information so people know how to contact you when things come up. I'm wondering 2 things, Rams. One, the collaborative work that we've been doing within the city, and it's a part of this gathering of people as well, involves many faith traditions. But we may also find that within other traditions and religions that perhaps their facilities aren't in the same state that Christian churches might be in, where there's more empty property or empty buildings. So there might be, so think about this one, but what ways might other religions and faith traditions be able to be involved? I'm sure they could do the same thing in terms of if they have property. So, but what are other creative ways? My question, and you probably know this one's coming because I'm excited about it, but maybe you could share a little bit about the Goliad Road community of promise. That's a kind of in one sense, although some of us have been talking already for about a year now, but it's at the beginning, but it's a very large puzzle
Yeah.
and an exciting one. Could you say a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And has been a crucial part of that one. We kind of came in on the back end of it, but y'all had already started the conversation, which is great. So Goliad is a kind of the same thing, about I think about 3 acres or so of property. Now they have a much larger building, and probably the building itself is, I would guess, we're probably about an area of 10,000 square feet or so. But most of it is just vacant. Their congregation is now about 10 people. And the conversations they're having with the denomination are, well, are you going to continue, or are you kind of closing down? Kind of what's the plan? And that is what kind of prompted this discussion. Say, well, let's start to figure out, what's possible. What can we really do, and what does the future of the church and the site look like? And so we've been having we're very early in the conversations ourselves. I know Anne's been talking to them for some time. But now there is this vision between them and a collaboration of other partners, of creating an area, a place, and a separate nonprofit on the church property called the Goliad Road Community of Promise, which is really leveraging the property of the church to play host to several nonprofits who can continue to offer services outside, from the church property. Which, one of which is a kind of a youth leadership kind of group. One is refugee housing. One is, I'm trying to remember what the other one, there were like 4 or 5 partners, I think,
There's
involved.
like a fishing
That's right.
group.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's a
that one's
fishing
really
ministry.
interesting. Yeah.
But and for me, as soon as we had this conversation, what it really resonated for me was, there's another place over on the west side called the Neighborhood Place. And it's a former school that ultimately they converted into by Family Service Association. And it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of a hub of nonprofits that serve the immediate community. And so we're going to be introducing them to have conversations to say, is this really kind of what you're thinking of? There's a model here that perhaps we could implement here. The other exciting thing about Goliad is they also still have about another 2 acres of vacant property on their site, which could potentially serve as housing. The other kind of great intersection right now is that there is already an effort around community conversations for the Goliad Road corridor planning. So right now there's a big planning effort around Goliad Road. And in fact, the church has, because they do community meetings around, this is the city doing a planning session around Goliad Road. They're actually going to be doing one of the last community meetings at the church, which one serves to connect the church in practical ways with this larger community who's talking about the larger corridor, but also as a result are going to be able to also say, hey, by the way, this is a property on that corridor that could potentially be leveraged to activate this place and provide, needed services and goods in the area. So what do you want to see on this particular site? And I'll say that as someone who's been in city government for a long time, or who has been in city government for a long time, there's a lot of planning that tends to go on in things, and then which ends up with a lot of pretty pictures, but unfortunately doesn't end up with a lot of action or tangible results. And so what is here, the opportunity that is being presented is saying, hey, yes, let's plan for the larger corridor, but let's talk about something real, which is this site at the same time. So, which is a really great opportunity for them to engage with the area, but also become in many ways a champion for the revitalization of that corridor and them being an anchor of it.
Thanks for saying that. I want to go ahead and telling us about that. I want to go ahead and open this up. I'm getting a lot of wows in the chat. So any thoughts, comments, questions for Ram? Even kudos?
Well, and I do also want to say that, so I'm the board chair of Impact Guild, but it is Sarah Woolsey who is the executive director and is doing the day-to-day of all this, engaging with churches. We are also doing a monthly gathering now, which is called the Good Acres Roundtable, to just continue bringing churches back to the table and sharing, okay, what are the conversations like in your congregation, and really just familiarizing, getting people socialized to the idea of this is, if you're thinking about this for your church, you're not alone, right? This is a growing conversation. There are more and more congregations wanting to do this. So don't feel like you're alone. Come and join this community that's talking about how this all gets put together, so that ultimately we can you're part of a community that's moving these kinds of projects forward. So that happens on a monthly basis. I believe the next one is the 27th.
I think it is too. And
Yeah,
that's
okay.
what, Tuesday, maybe?
Yeah, correct.
Tuesday.
Right.
Where is that and what time is that roundtable? Highly encourage people to go.
Yes. Let me pull it up actually here real quick so I can take a look.
So that's one first step, to get involved, but those are they're beyond exciting. They are so inspiring, and to just be with people from all over the city, from congregations who are, reimagining, right? Co-creating a different San Antonio, changing the neighborhood, changing their own lives. Transforming their congregation through these very physical, acts. So I rambled on a little bit. Ram, did you find it for next Tuesday? No, he's still looking.
No, I got it. It is
He's got it.
Tuesday, 9 a.m. at Sunset Ridge Church. So the first church that I talked about who converted the parking lot into a park, a community park, well, we're going to be having it over there. And so everyone is welcome to join us. And then the next session that I don't have a date for yet, which will be in September, it will be at the other church that I mentioned, at Emmanuel Church.
Manuals.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So the round table is once a month. And then periodically there have been, as Ram mentioned, it kind of started pre-COVID with a conference, but there have been other types of those things that have happened along the way that the Good Acres and the Impact Guild do for the city.
Oh, let me
I know
also
I got,
add.
go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I will forget though. And also we just launched the Good Futures Accelerator, which is a cohort, we're still accepting interest in application. Well, not really applications. It's really open to anyone, any congregations that want to participate. But it's really kind of walking through the reimagining of property and really doing it as a cohort, and that transpires over about a year. And this is through course material that we've obtained through Rooted Good, which is doing this an outfit from the UK that we have a great partnership with, and they put out material to kind of help churches do more of this. And so we'll be utilizing that course material to really kind of do this walkthrough of a cohort through what is called the Good Futures Accelerator. And so if you're interested in that, I'm happy to send some information to you, Anne, and you can kind of send that out to the group.
Yeah, I've been kind of taking notes in chat. I see that Paul has his hand up. So Paul.
Ram, you've given great examples of individual congregations that are engaged. Have any of the higher levels in some of the religious groups, dioceses, synods, and so forth, expressed an interest so that the impact might involve multiple congregations?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And so actually the one for Emmanuel Church started at the denominational level. So we actually reached out to the Methodist Church and just said, hey, we've got this idea, that we're kind of working on, and we're looking for churches that would be good. So we actually spent about 2 weeks just driving around with some of the denominational leadership from the Methodist Church here, looking at different sites. We looked at about 8 different sites. Some were too big or nestled in neighborhoods that they felt probably wouldn't be as open to some big change, and other areas where the church was already kind of gone. It was really just an empty building, but it was like it was either in such disrepair that there were limited options, and it just didn't have much of a footprint. So where we ended up was Emmanuel Church, which was really just perfect from a site standpoint. And I think that's something else that we have to figure out, is that not every church, not every site is going to be an Emmanuel kind of site, right? It's going to be maybe the first one that's too small and in disrepair, or it might be the other one, which is, you're going to have a lot of neighborhood challenges in trying to get something done. And so I don't think it's you don't deal with those, it's you deal with them differently. And for purposes of the Emmanuel project, and for some of the first projects coming out of the ground, we wanted to have kind of I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, kind of quick wins, right? What are the projects that can be really kind of demonstration projects, so that people aren't turned off by the challenges that might exist on either end of the other spectrums. And so it really served as a really perfect kind of model project for us. But yeah, so the denomination actually kind of partnered with us in identifying and going through a number of different potential sites, and we landed on Emmanuel. We're also having conversations with the Archdiocese as well. They've been very open to it. They've told us, well, go and look at all the sites that we have and tell us which one you're interested in and what you want to do. That was actually around the time of COVID, and so we've not picked that back up yet. But they were interested in it. But yeah, to your point, I think that's where those conversations really need to be happening as well. So that we can really kind of see, okay, well, let them know that these conversations are happening and the opportunities are there. It's a great point.
So I've been putting information, by the way, in chat. Billy, it's been asked, when will this recording be done? And Billy usually has it done within the next 24 hours. But I do know that he's also very busy with the Pathways to Hope conference. So
it's likely to be Sunday before this one gets posted.
So that kind of, don't want to push him because we're all doing stuff, but it's usually there in pretty good time. So other thoughts at 8:38, other than, man, Ram, I'm so glad you're doing this work. It's interesting, I became aware of this kind of work. So I'm going to tell just a wee God story here about how things move. But I ran into a woman, clergy, from just outside of Denver at a Pathways to Hope conference, this mental health conference that's happening this weekend in San Antonio at the Tobin. We just ran into each other. You know what I'm saying? We're standing up and talking. And she had heard about Pathways and how it's so community involved in terms of mental health. And that's why she came from Colorado, was for that. But I asked her about what kind of exciting work was being done in her area. And this was pre-COVID. I want to say it was even like 6 years ago. And when I asked the question, she was just on fire. And she started to tell me that St. John's Cathedral in Denver had taken their parking lot that overlooks the Capitol, and they had built transitional housing there for people with mental health concerns as well as housing needs. That was then partnered with the cathedral there is Episcopal. They partnered with a Catholic nonprofit that is also there on site, and they provide the wraparound care and navigation for the people who live there. On the one side, it's just like full glass, and it's so beautiful, and it overlooks, like I said, you can see the Capitol, you can see, the whole skyline of Denver, and you look out the other window and you see a labyrinth and you see St. John's Cathedral. It's just an amazing work. And it was started out of Interfaith Colorado. Ram, I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but, and so they were very strategic, Interfaith Colorado, in partnering with the cathedral, because they knew that story, right? Because it was the cathedral, right? They knew that story would get some leverage and some validation. Like we need that, but it's that whole kind of NIMBY kind of thing, but some validation, some credit to this important work. And it's just, and they built a system. I don't know if you've heard about this, Ram, and we've tried to do that through our collaborative work, and maybe we're just a little ahead of the time, but they built a system of teams, of volunteer teams, because Denver is large, San Antonio is large. We need groups of people working on this much larger than a handful to meet the needs. We all know this about housing, to meet the needs. And so they have teams of highly skilled volunteers, and they have an initial team that does like conversation work that you've been talking about, Ram, where they walk with the congregation, they try to figure things out, and then they pass that to a development team. And then that development team of highly skilled volunteers works on funding, or how they're going to set up the land lease, or how they're going to find the money, or how that's going to work. And they have expertise in that. And then they pass it on to a design team that works on, like, the architect. Again, many of those are architects and people, engineers, who volunteer and help that congregation figure out those next steps. And then there, of course, there's the construction era. And then there's another team on wraparound services that's building those partnerships. For example, like Community of Promise, Goliad, that's all partnerships of nonprofits that already exist. They're also looking at having a mental health clinic there, as well as a resourcing kiosk with sacred.org on it. So we were working on that collaborative effort, but it hasn't gotten too far. But maybe it's about time to start doing that again, because Ram, you and Sarah, you can't do this by yourself.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's what's so key, is that the more we talk about it, the more people, the light bulb is going off and they're going on and saying, hey, look, how do I plug in? How do I get involved in this? What does that look like? And I think those teams would be a great kind of addition to the ecosystem we're looking to build. Because, it is true, as we have conversations, and even, when we did the original summit, I kind of describe it as, we have top of the funnel and a lot of congregations are interested. And then it's like, well, who makes it to the kind of to the bottom of it and actually produce the project? Well, there's a lot of conversation between the top and the bottom of the funnel, both between us and churches, but then churches amongst themselves, in terms of even just getting comfortable. But even when you do, there's that whole technical aspect that is challenging, and there's only so much that myself and Sarah can do, obviously. But you're right; it's really about building a community of people who want to be assisting and supporting these projects to actually get more units on the ground. And when I talk to a developer and ask them, well, why don't you just work with churches more often? Why don't you just go and engage with churches? The response is usually, well, because churches take too long to make decisions. Because churches, we could be talking for a long, long time, and then they never want to do anything. And then we ask churches, well, why don't you go and just talk to a developer? Well, we don't know who to trust. We don't know if they're going to take us for a ride or take advantage of our property. So there is a need for this kind of intermediary between the churches and then those who may be the developers, or even helping the church self-develop. So, I mean, yeah, to your point, there is a great need for more and more people to be involved in this work, because it's such a need, and it's also such an opportunity. 3,000 acres of available church property here in San Antonio that could be mobilized for affordable housing. And when you do the numbers, that alone could meet all of our affordable housing needs here in San Antonio. So the opportunity is great, but yeah, we need more people at the table, need more hands in the work.
And I would think too that those are some of the partnerships where other faith traditions and religions could really help contribute to that housing. And the beautiful thing that I see with congregational properties that's different than maybe, another housing development and apartments, is the whole thing about relationships.
Yeah.
and forming community. So there's kind of, I wish I could remember the exact saying, but there's this saying about you know, this may take longer in the short run, but in the long run, it's the shorter route to something that's much more sustainable, much more community, much more relational. I mean, you can build 400 apartments, but that doesn't mean, I mean, shelter, it means maybe community. It can mean lots of things.
Right.
But this kind of work, it's kind of that, if you want to go fast, go alone and just build
Right.
the stuff, right? If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
Let's make it together from the beginning. But it's a process.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's 8:46, and I always promise that I will sign off and let us all go free at 8:45. And so, Ram, thank you for this morning. I mean, you really jumped into this, and I so appreciate what you're
Absolutely.
doing and your work. And when you're ready to talk teams
Yeah.
and getting some support system, I'm all over that. And
Yeah.
we've got people who are interested. So, and as Julie
Absolutely.
put in there, very, very helpful. So,
Thank you.
Paul, thanks for that
And
little
thank you, Ann,
kudos.
for all the work that you do, and you've been kind of, leading this collaborative. So yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot more that we can be doing in that collaboration and collaboratively, just kind of as a community, big C, So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to kind of share with your group here. And if anyone ever needs to reach out to me, please do. You can reach us through the Impact Guild website or Good Acres. I also do a consulting firm through Mission Affordable. So any number of ways you can reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you and see how we can help.
Great. I put Sarah's information in the chat. So
Okay, great.
thank you all. You have great weekends, a great morning, and I'll see you next week at the intersection when we hear about the ship.
Great.
Bye all. Thanks, Ram.
Thanks.